The lockdown that shook us. It was a typical boring day in calculus. It was Friday, seventh period, which meant the week was almost over, and spring break was finally upon us. Everyone was getting antsy in their seats, anticipating the weekend. I could tell we didn't have a test that day, unlike a lot of my friends with their other teachers. Our teacher, who was very laid back, decided to pass the time by playing games with us on Sporkle.com. We were doing a brand logo quiz when it happened. I remember it clearly. Right after my friend answered a question, Adidas, the dean's voice came through the loudspeaker. His tone was frantic and panicked as he urgently told all teachers that this was not a drill and to go into lockdown. I got chills. Goosebumps ran down my arms. Our usually calm teacher, who'd been joking around with us just minutes before, seemed alarmed. He quickly ran to turn off the lights and ushered us into the back corner of the room. We sat in silence for about 2 minutes. Then the buzzing noise from a panel in the back of the room ceased, signaling that the school must have cut all the power. We all exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't a drill. This was real. A few minutes passed, and then we heard it. A man screaming at the top of his lungs as he ran down the hallway. 2 girls in the class started crying, which only made us more frightened. The screaming grew louder as it came closer. Then we heard the man banging on the lockers while shouting, "I'll kill all of you!" It was at that moment that I began to fear for my life. The screaming echoed throughout the hallway as the man moved closer to our classroom. Our teacher shushed us, and we all exchanged nervous glances, silently acknowledging the danger we were in. The banging on the lockers stopped and moved to our classroom door. The man began yelling, "Open up!" The pounding on the door grew louder, more violent. 2 of the girls in the class were sobbing out loud now. Time felt like it had slowed to a crawl. We sat there in complete fear, waiting, hoping it would stop. It felt like an eternity, but finally the banging stopped, and we heard the man's screams fading as he moved down the hallway, still shouting wildly. We sat there frozen in silence for what felt like forever. 10 minutes later, though it seemed like much longer, the dean's voice came back on the loudspeaker. He explained the situation. A mentally unstable man had entered the building and assaulted the woman at the front desk, causing her to flee the building screaming. Staff wasn't sure if the man was armed or not. The school didn't have cameras or proper security at the time, so it was wide open to threats like this. The dean said that a sweep of all the hallways and classrooms had been done, and they couldn't find the man. Teachers were instructed to resume their classes, but to keep all doors locked and not let anyone leave for any reason. The most disturbing part, however, came later. One of the janitors working the night shift found the man sleeping in one of the storage closets near the back of the school. Rumor had it that the man had a .44 Magnum sticking out of his pocket. Apparently, the janitor did something that woke him up, like leaving the closet door open. By the time a police officer arrived, the man was gone. To this day, I don't think anyone in my class knows what really happened to him. I like to think he's getting the help he needs now, wherever he is. 2. The unknown threat. My school had 2 lunch periods. The first one was for all 6th graders and some 7th graders, while the second one was for the rest of the 7th graders and all the 8th graders. The lockdown happened in the beginning of October, and it was an overcast, rainy day. During the first lunch period, I was sitting with a few friends when we heard 4 loud booms. At first, I thought it was just thunder, but suddenly the entire lunch crowd started screaming and running. I assumed the other kids were just overreacting, but it didn't take long for campus security to rush in, shouting at everyone to go into the multi-purpose room. Panic spread quickly. We all hurried toward the room, confused and a bit shaken, unsure of what was happening. As we piled into the multi-purpose room, the tension in the air was thick. People were still whispering, trying to make sense of the booms. Some kids were still laughing nervously, assuming it was just some prank or false alarm. But the seriousness in the voices of the staff, along with the fact that we'd been rushed into the room so quickly, made it clear this was no joke. No one knew for sure what had happened, but the looks on the teachers' faces told us it was serious. They locked the doors behind us and told us to stay quiet and calm. I heard whispers of rumors floating around the room, about the booms possibly being gunshots, or worse. We were stuck in that room for what felt like forever, the minutes dragging by. It wasn't until much later that we found out that someone had fired shots near the school. but fortunately, no one had been hurt. We learned that the person responsible had been apprehended, but the feeling of fear and uncertainty remained long after the lockdown was lifted. Looking back, I realized how quickly fear can spread in those kinds of situations. The chaos, the uncertainty, the lack of information, it was all overwhelming, and it was a reminder of how fragile safety can feel in moments like that. A desperate stranger. It was a normal afternoon in school, just like any other, until the lockdown alarm went off. The day was cloudy and dreary, the kind of weather that made everything feel slower and more tense. The students were already restless, as the school year was starting to drag on. Some were chatting, others were absorbed in their phones or schoolwork, while a few were just staring out the windows, waiting for the day to end. Then it happened. The loudspeaker crackled to life, and the voice of the principal came through urgent and stern. "This is not a drill. All students and staff must immediately lock down and stay where you are. Lock your doors, close your windows, and remain silent." At first, the reaction was confusion. Everyone looked at each other, wondering if it was a joke. We'd all seen drills before, so it wasn't too shocking at first. But the tone in the principal's voice sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't the usual calm, collected voice you'd hear during a drill. This was something different. The teacher immediately locked the door and turned off the lights, urging us all to hide under the desks and stay quiet. The room fell into an eerie silence. I could hear the rustling of paper and the soft sounds of breath, but that was it. My heart was pounding in my chest. What was going on? Minutes felt like hours. We sat there, not knowing if it was a real threat or just another drill gone wrong. The air was thick with tension. Some students were texting their parents, others were just sitting frozen, trying to make sense of the situation. Every little noise, every shift in movement made us jump. Then the sound of running footsteps echoed in the hallway. It was fast, erratic. We all froze, straining our ears to hear. The sound stopped right outside our classroom door. Someone, a teacher or staff member maybe, shouted something, but the noise of pounding footsteps was louder. Whoever was outside was in a rush, frantic. We could hear the heavy breathing, the rapid footsteps, and then the unmistakable sound of a door slamming open. There was a tense moment of silence, and then a voice. A man's voice shouting, filled with rage. "Where are you? You can't hide forever." It was a voice full of anger, desperate and unhinged. I could feel my blood run cold. The man was right outside. My heart raced as I looked around the room. Everyone was holding their breath, eyes wide with fear. No one moved. For what felt like forever, there was nothing but silence. Then the sound of footsteps slowly moving away from the door, fading into the distance. We all exhaled in unison, not realizing we had been holding our breath. After what seemed like an eternity, the principal came back on the loudspeaker, informing everyone that the threat had been contained. He didn't go into much detail, only saying that a man had entered the building and was being apprehended. The police had arrived, and the situation was under control. We were told that the lockdown was over, but no one moved immediately. We were all too stunned, too shaken to do anything. It wasn't until much later that we learned the full story. The man had been acting erratically and had caused a disturbance in the school. Thankfully, no one was injured, but it left a lasting impact on everyone in the building that day. We all realized how fragile safety could be in situations like that.